Hey y'all, have y'all ever been in a cooking rut before where you just make the same thing over and over and you really kind of don't venture out? And I am going to venture out of my comfort zone today, and I'm going to bring you 3 ground beef recipes, and I've never made them before. I've got one is a meatball sub casserole, one is a Philly cheese pasta, and one is a taco skillet, and they are all so good. That taco skillet, you can make it in so many ways. You could add beans to it. You could also put it in a taco, a burrito. You could make it into a taco salad or nachos, just anything you want. It is so good. All 3 of them are good and perfect for a quick weeknight meal. So none of them are hard, but they're all delicious. And I'll have all the recipes linked down below in the description box because you got to make them. So I'll turn you around and let's get started. I went ahead and started on 1 pound of ground beef, just making the meatballs for the meatball sub. And I had a cute little helper here helping me, and he was counting the meatballs for me. And I'm just browning those in a cast iron skillet with some avocado oil. I don't want to cook them all the way. They will cook the rest of the way in the meatball sub casserole. Okay, I'm going to start on the Philly cheesesteak pasta. And I've got my ground beef from yesterday, and I've got 1 onion chopped. And I added a chopped up bell pepper, and I'm adding a mushroom, or a couple mushrooms, even though the recipe doesn't call for it. I've got those in my fridge and I need to use that up. So I'm going to go ahead and add that, and I'm going to stir that around and cook it until the red pepper is softened. And also I added some salt and pepper, and I'm adding some Worcestershire sauce to it. I didn't measure, I just eyeballed it, but I will have the exact recipe linked down below. And here I'm adding the noodles. The recipe calls for macaroni, but I'm adding some small shells that I had on hand that I needed to use up. And I'm just going to mix that around together. Okay, it calls for 2 cups of beef broth. I'm just using my home canned beef broth. It does call for 1 cup of water, and I had a lot of liquid in mine, so I would probably leave that off if I were you. But I'm just going to heat it up to boiling, and then I'm going to cover it with a lid, and I'm going to let it simmer for about 15 minutes or until the pasta is cooked. So now the pasta is done. I'm going to go ahead and take some cream cheese and put it in there and let it melt. The recipe calls for provolone and mozzarella, but I didn't have any, so I had some white sliced cheese, so I just used that. And it turned out perfect. And it did say that you could add milk, but I didn't think it needed it. And it also called for provolone and mozzarella over the top, so I had some Colby Jack cheese, so I just used that instead. I still can't believe I've never made a Philly cheesesteak pasta before, because I love a good cheesesteak sandwich, and this was really delicious. It came together in no time, and there was not a leftover in sight. We ate it all, and we loved it. And I just paired it with a salad, and it was so good. Y'all have got to try this recipe. It was amazing. Okay, now we're going to start on the meatball sub casserole. This was so good and so easy to make. And I've got some bread here. Instead of buying the garlic bread, I just got this out of the freezer. It's just pre-sliced Italian bread from Walmart. And I'm going to lay out my bread here, and I'm going to melt some butter and some garlic, and I'll just rub it on the bread and let it toast in the oven while I'm getting everything else ready. And I've seen a lot of recipes where they've torn up the bread, or some people have used pasta, but I saw someone say that you want to toast the bread so it won't be soggy, so that's what I'm going to do. I'll just rub all the pieces with the garlic butter mixture and then let it toast in the oven until everything else is ready. Okay, I've got my meatballs that I made the other day, and I'm going to cover them up with some sauce and mix that together. I am using my Rayo sauce. I got a great deal on this sauce at a salvage store. It was only $2.99. I know I've seen it for $6 and $7. I don't know if I could really spend that much money on some pasta sauce. But I'm just going to pour that over the meatballs and let that simmer. Okay, and while the meatballs are simmering in the sauce, I'm going to mix up like a creamy mixture that's going to go in the middle. And it's just cream cheese, mayonnaise, and I added some pepper and some Italian seasonings. And I'm just going to mix that up until it's smooth. And it didn't call for it, but I am adding some of that Parmesan cheese that was so good that I use in everything now. So I'm just going to add that to it as well. So I just spread that over the bread, and I also added a half a cup of shredded mozzarella cheese. Okay, now I'm going to just layer the meatballs over the cheese mixture. And if I had to do this over again, I would make the meatballs just a little bit smaller. It was a little bit hard to eat with the bigger meatballs, but just make them a little bit smaller and it will be perfect. Okay, I added all the meatballs, and now I'm just going to pour the sauce all over the top and make sure I get all the cheese covered in all that delicious sauce. Okay, then I added some shredded mozzarella cheese and some of that Parmesan cheese over the top, and it says to bake it uncovered for 30 to 35 minutes. And that was so good, y'all. Look at it. It was smelling so good and it tasted amazing. We just had this with the rest of that salad that we had from the other day, and this was the perfect weeknight meal, y'all. I cannot believe I have not ever made this before, but it won't be my last time for sure. Alright, last but not least, this is a one-pot cheesy taco skillet. It was so good and it came together quick and easy. And in this recipe, I got to use up a lot of stuff that I had in my fridge, especially like some vegetables. And I know if you have picky kids, they would probably never know that you had vegetables in here. It does call for a zucchini, which I've never had in Mexican before, and also some spinach, but that'll come later. And I've got a pepper and an onion. I had a pepper that was going bad, and I also had some onion in the fridge that I needed to use up, so it works out really good. And I'm just going to stir that around until it's cooked. It does say to brown the ground beef and drain it and then cook the other things, but I thought I would just do it all at once and then I'll drain out the grease after everything is cooked. But now I'm going to go ahead and add the spinach in. It calls for a lot more than I put in there, but that's all I had, so I just rinsed it off and added to that. But I would next time chop it up, especially if you have kids and they can see all that green stuff in there. You want to chop it up. I could still see it in there, and I like spinach, but if you're trying to hide it from kids, you probably need to chop it up. But I'm just going to stir this around until the spinach gets wilted. Okay, I just took it out of the pan and put it in a colander over a bowl to let that drain. And while it's doing its thing, I'm going to add a can of Rotel. This was the original. It was a little bit spicy, but it wasn't too bad. So now I'm going to add that mixture back into the Rotel and get that all mixed in together. And then I added a packet of taco seasoning and just mixed that together. And I turned up the heat and let that cook a little bit, and then I turned it on simmer, and I'm just going to let it hang out until I get to the next step. Okay, it's done. It's absorbed all those flavors. I've got some Mexican rice over there on the stove, so now I'm going to go ahead and top it with some cheese. I've got some Monterey Jack that I'm going to add to the top. And you could use this in a taco salad. You could put this in a taco in a hard shell or a soft shell, but this was really good. You could do all kinds of stuff with it. I would have made a taco salad with it, but I didn't have any lettuce. And you could also make nachos with it. If you had some tortillas, it would be good with that as well. Does that not look so good? You could probably also add beans to it. This is so versatile. You could do a lot with this, but it was really good, and especially if you don't have but a few minutes to make dinner, this would be perfect. And I got this rice. This is my favorite rice. It's the Goya brand, and I'm also going to serve it with some sour cream, and I've got an avocado that I chopped up that really needs to be used up, so I'm going to use that too. Y'all, these were so good. I'm so glad I expanded my horizons and made some different recipes that I've never made before. But I got lucky in all three of these recipes because they were delicious. So I know y'all are going to enjoy them. If you've got ground beef, Y'all have got to make these recipes. I hope y'all try these recipes. They were really amazing and so quick to put together. Just add a side dish, a salad, and you got a meal in no time, and they're delicious. So I'll have the recipes linked down below. So I hope y'all have a wonderful day. I'll see y'all in the next one.